ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaskar my dear friends. In this video I am going to describe the views of Maharshi Ramana on self-enquiry. It starts with the question, what is it? That is, what is self-enquiry? So Maharshi replies, to all deep thinking minds, the enquiry about the I and its nature has an irresistible fascination. Self-enquiry is the one infallible means, the only direct one to realize the unconditioned absolute being that you really are. Disciple puts a question to Maharshi, is it not funny that the I should be searching for the I? Does not the enquiry who am I turn out in the end to be an empty formula, or am I to put the question to myself endlessly, repeating it like a mantra? Maharshi replies, self-enquiry is certainly not an empty formula. It is more than a repetition of any mantra. If the enquiry, who am I, were a mere mental questioning, it would not be of much value. The very purpose of self-enquiry is to focus the entire mind at its source. It is not, therefore, a case of one I searching for another I. Where the I merges, another entity emerges as I of its own accord. That is the perfect self. Inquiring into the nature of one's self that is in bondage and realizing one's true nature is release. Though the I is always experienced, yet one's attention has to be drawn to it. Then only knowledge dawns. These questions and answers are taken from various books on Maharshi Ramana. If the ego is, everything else also is. If the ego is not, nothing else is. Indeed, the ego is all. Therefore, the enquiry as to what this ego is the only way of giving up everything. Experiences such as I went, I came, I was, I did come naturally to everyone. From these experiences, does it not appear that the consciousness I is the subject of those various acts? Enquiry into the true nature of that consciousness and remaining as oneself is the way to understand one's true nature. What is its goal? The aim is to reach the root of the I sense. To attain natural happiness, one must know oneself. For that self-enquiry, who am I, is the chief means. There can be satisfaction only when you reach the source, otherwise there will be restlessness. On diving deep upon the quest, who am I and from whence, thoughts disappear and consciousness of self flashes forth as the I within the cavity of every seeker's heart. And this is heaven. This is that stillness, the abode of bliss. That state is agreeable to all wherein, having given up the objective outlook, one knows oneself and loses all notions either of unity or duality of oneself and the ego. The duality of subject and object and trinity of seer, sight, and seen can exist only if supported by the One. If one turns inward in search of that one reality, they fall away. Those who see this are those who see wisdom. They are never in doubt. The end of the path of jnana is to know the truth that the I is not different from the Lord Isura and to be free from the feeling of being the doer. Kartaritva ahamkara. When the world, which is what is seen, has been removed, there will be realization of the self, which is the seer. This sadhana is enough. It is no doubt said in some books that one should go on cultivating one good quality after another and thus prepare for moksha. But for those who follow the jnana or vichara marga, their sadhana is itself quite enough for acquiring all Daivic, that is divine qualities. They need not do anything else. If one resorts to contemplation of the self unintermittently until the self is gained, that alone would do. The enquiry, who am I, is the principal means to the removal of all misery and the attainment of the supreme bliss. Never forgetting one's plenary self-experience is real bhakti, devotion. Yoga, mind control, jnana, knowledge, and all other austerities. This method, which easily destroys egoity, deserves to be called devotion, bhakti, meditation, dhyana, concentration, yoga, and knowledge, jnana. Absorbs in the heart of being, whence we spring, is the path of action, of devotion, of union, and of knowledge, suitable only for ripe souls. Although Advaita is the ultimate doctrine and self-inquiry is the supreme and most direct path, this throughout the ages has not been the most popular because for most people it seemed too austere and difficult. This is suitable only for ripe souls. The rest should follow different methods according to the state of their minds. How does it work? Vichara begins when you cling to yourself and are already off the mental movement, the thought waves. Once the I emerges, all else emerges. With a keen mind, enquire whence this I emerges. Whence does this I arise? Seek for it within it, then vanishes. This is the pursuit of wisdom. Thoughts alone constitute the mind, and for all thoughts, the base or source is the I thought. I is the mind. If we go inward, questing for the source of the I topples down. This is the jnana enquiry. If one inquires who am I within the mind, the individual I falls down abased as soon as one reaches the heart, and immediately reality manifests itself spontaneously as I. Although it reveals itself as I, it is not the ego but the perfect being, the absolute self. What you call yourself now is not the real self, which is neither born nor dies. When one persistently inquires into the nature of the mind will end leaving the self as the residue. What is referred to as the self is the Atma. When other thoughts arise, one should not pursue them, but should inquire to whom do they arise. It does not matter how many thoughts arise. As each thought arises, one should inquire with diligence to whom has this thought arisen. The answer that would emerge would be to me. Thereupon, if one inquires, who am I? The mind will go back to its source, and thought that arose will become quiescent. With repeated practice in this manner, the mind will develop the skill to stay in its source. You must distinguish between the I, pure in itself, and the I thought. The latter, being merely a thought, sees subject and object, sleeps, wakes up, eats, and thinks, dies, and is reborn. But the pure I is the pure being, eternal existence, free from ignorance and thought illusion. If you stay as the I, your being alone, without thought, the I thought will disappear and the delusion will vanish forever. In a cinema show, you can see pictures only in a very dim light or in darkness. But when all lights are switched on, all pictures disappear. So also, in the floodlight of the Supreme Atma, all objects disappear. The real is ever present, like the screen on which all the movie pictures move. While the pictures appear on it, it remains invisible. Stop the pictures and the screen, which has all along been present. In fact, the only object that has existed throughout will become clear. All these universes, humans, objects, thoughts, and events are merely pictures moving on the screen of pure consciousness, which alone is real. Shapes and phenomena pass away, but consciousness remains ever. Turning the mind inward is done by practice and dispassion, and that succeeds only gradually. The mind, having been so long a cow accustomed to graze still freely on others' estates, is not easily confined to her stall. However much her keeper tempts her with luscious grass and fine fodder, she refuses the first time. Then she takes a bit, but her innate tendency to stray away asserts itself, and she slips away. On being repeatedly tempted by the owner, she accustoms herself to the stall. Finally, even if let loose, she would not stray away. Similarly, with the mind, if once it finds its inner happiness, it will not wander outward. By repeated practice, one can become accustomed to turning inwards and finding the self. One must always and constantly make an effort until one has permanently realized. Once the effort ceases, the state becomes natural and the Supreme takes possession of the person with an unbroken current until it has become permanently natural and your habitual state. Know that you have not realized the self, only glimpsed it. As thoughts arise, they should be destroyed then and there in the very place of their origin through enquiry. As long as there are enemies within the fortress, they will continue to sally forth. If they are destroyed as they emerge, the fortress will fall into our hands. Maharshi, how do you meditate? Disciple, I begin to ask myself, who am I? Eliminate body as not I, the breath as not I, the mind as not I, and I am not able to proceed further. Maharshi, well, that is so far as the intellect goes. Your process is only intellectual. Indeed, all the scriptures mention the process only to guide the seeker to know the truth. The truth cannot be directly pointed out. Hence, this intellectual process, you see, the one who eliminates all the not I cannot eliminate the I. To say I am not this or I am that, there must be the I. This I is only the ego or the I thought. After the rising up of this I thought, all other thoughts arise. The I thought is therefore the root thought. If the root is pulled out, all others are at the same time uprooted. Therefore, seek the root I. Question yourself, who am I? Find out its source. Then all these will vanish and pure self will remain ever. Devotee, how to do it? Maharshi, the I is always there, in deep sleep, in dream, and in wakefulness. The one in sleep is the same as that who now speaks. There is always the feeling of I, otherwise do you deny your existence? You do not. You say I am. Find out who is. Devotee, even so, I do not understand. I, you say, is the wrong I now. How to eliminate this wrong I? Maharshi, you need not eliminate the wrong I. How can I eliminate itself? All that you need do is to find out its origin and abide there. Your efforts can extend only thus far. then the beyond will take care of itself. You are helpless there. No effort can reach it. Devotee, if I am always here and now, why do I not feel so? Maharshi, that is it. Who says it is not felt? Does the real I say it or false I? Examine it. You will find it is the wrong I. The wrong I is the obstruction. It has to be removed in order that the true I may not be hidden. The feeling that I have not realized is the obstruction to realization. In fact, it is already realized. There is nothing more to be realized. Otherwise, the realization will be new. It has not existed so far. It must take place hereafter. What is born will also die. If realization be not eternal, it is not worth having. Therefore, what we seek is not that which must happen afresh. It is only that which is eternal but not now known due to obstructions. It is that we seek. All that we need do is to remove the obstruction. That which is eternal is not known to be so because of ignorance. Ignorance is the obstruction. Get over this ignorance and all will be well. The ignorance is identical with the I thought. Find its source and it will vanish. The I thought is like a spirit which, although not palpable, rises up automatically with the body, flourishes and disappears with it. The body consciousness is the wrong I. Give up this body consciousness. It is done by seeking the source of I. The body does not say I am. It is you who say I am the body. Find out who this I is. Seeking its source, it will vanish. Devotee, then will there be bliss? Maharshi, bliss is coeval with being consciousness. All the arguments relating to eternal being of that bliss apply to bliss also. Your nature is bliss. Ignorance is now hiding that bliss. Remove the ignorance for bliss to be freed. Devotee, should we not find out the ultimate reality of the world, individual and God? Maharshi, these are all conceptions of the I. They arise only after the advent of the I thought. Did you think of them in your deep sleep? You existed in deep sleep and the same you are now speaking. If they be real, should they not be in your sleep also? They are only dependent upon the I thought. Again, does the world tell you I am the world? Does the body say I am the body? You say this is the world, this is the body, and so on. So these are only your conceptions. Find out who you are, and there will be an end of all your doubts. What exists in truth, the one or the many? All religions postulate the three fundamentals: the world, the soul, and God. But it is only the one reality that manifests itself as these three. One can say the three are really three only so long as the ego lasts. Therefore, to inhere in one's own being, where the I or ego is dead, is the perfect state. From our perception of the world, there follows acceptance of a unique first principle possessing various powers, pictures of name and form. The person who sees the screen on which he sees and the light by which he sees, he himself is all of these. What exists in truth is the self alone. The world, the individual soul, and God are appearances in it, like silver in mother of pearl. These three appear at the same time and disappear at the same time. The self is that where there is absolutely no I thought. That is called silence. The self itself is the world. The self itself is the I. The self itself is God. And all is Shiva, the self. Undifferentiated consciousness is the only true reality. Whatever is different from it, it is personal and has nescience as its material cause and consciousness as its basis. The nature of ignorance or nescience. The nescience means ignorance. The nescience imagined in Brahma and its effects, namely the individual, the Lord, and the world, are unreal in all the three periods of time. Whatever is seen is the play of the intellect, which is the effect of that nescience. Brahma, while unmoved, illumines the intellect. This intellect projects its false imagination in the states of waking and dreaming and merges in the nescience in the state of deep sleep. Brahma is without attributes and cannot therefore be cognized. Its general existence is known even in the state of nescience in the form of I am, while its particular aspects like consciousness, bliss, etc., are not then known, but are known only in the state of knowledge. The attributeless Brahma is known as existence and unknown as consciousness and bliss. Although Brahma is consciousness, the general, indistinct aspect of that all pervasive consciousness, which is of the nature of effulgence, is not inimical to nescience, but helpful to it. The general possibility of fire within the wood is not inimical to darkness, but helpful to it. But as the actualized manifest fire produced by rubbing the wood is inimical to darkness, so also the distinct consciousness produced in the mind as Brahma is inimical to nescience. Just as the elemental ether within the flame of a lamp is known to fill without any difference and without any limit both the inside and the outside of the flame, so also the knowledge ether that is within the self, light in the heart, fills without any difference and without any limit both the inside and the outside of that self light. This is what is referred to as Brahma. Just as movie pictures can be made visible by a reflected light and only in darkness. So also the world pictures are perceptible only by the light of the self reflected in the darkness of avidya, ignorance. The world can be seen neither in the utter direct darkness of ignorance as in deep sleep, nor in the utter light of the self as in self-realization or samadhi. Disciple. If the jiva is by nature identical with the self, what is it that prevents the jiva from realizing its true nature? Master. It is forgetfulness of the jiva's true nature. This is known as the power of veiling. Devotee. It is true that the jiva has forgotten itself. How does the I experience arise for all? Maharshi, the veil does not completely hide the jiva. It only hides the self nature of I and projects the I am the body notion. But it does not hide the self's existence, which is I and which is real and eternal. Ignorance cannot hide the basic I, but it hides the specific truth that the Jiva is the Supreme Self. The ignorance arising from the Self, which is Brahma, is mere imagination, kalpita, and has no beginning. It is due to illusion, born of ignorance, that man failed to recognize that which is always and for everybody the inherent reality dwelling in its natural heart center and to abide in it, and that instead they argue that it exists or does not exist, that it has form or has not form, or is non-dual or dual. So I complete this video here, and in the next video I will start with the nature of mind. Okay, thank you for watching this video. Namaskar, my dear friends.